All right, so welcome back to part 3 of this MERN stack live coding video tutorial. In the last part, we kind of created this create product page where if you kind of enter this information and click submit, it actually hits a backend and saves some data to Mongo. So it would be cool if we had a page where we can see all the products that existed in our database and showed them to the user. So that is what we're going to try to work on in this part 3 video. Let's just try to knock that out. So again, the first thing that the user needs to be able to do is probably hit a backend endpoint to get all the products that have been created. So I like to start with the backend first and create the data so that we can actually use that in the front end without having to like do mocks or anything like that. So let's load up index.js. This is the main express file that's hosting all of our endpoints. And we need to make a new endpoint, right? So we currently have a post request of products to create products. What we probably need is a get request to products to get a product. So I'm going to say get products controller. Make sure you spell it correctly. Man, I'm spelling everything wrong right now. And so we need to make sure we create a file called get products controller. So I'll go ahead and make a new file here. And this one is going to be similar to the create one. I'm just going to copy some code over and we can rename it. So get products controller. The main difference though is instead of doing like a new product and saving it, we need to query Mongoose to get all the products. So I think what we can do, I'm going to go off memory right here, but is we can basically do a product model here dot find. And if I just do empty curly braces, I think that'll give us back every product. I could be wrong. And if I am, we'll just go to the docs. But this will basically query Mongo, give us every product. And then we could simply say res.json products. So that should hopefully be a good start. Make sure we go back to the index.js and make sure that we import that. And once you've imported that, we can kind of test that out with advanced REST clients. So the same developer flow that I showed you before, where you make the endpoint, you test it with REST client, and then you start building out the UI, I think is a good flow to follow. So let's go here. Instead of doing a post request, let's do a get request on products and just hit it and see what gets returned. So if you see here, we get back all the products. So we got a big list of products, and you can further do filtering. Like if someone only wanted to get a product by a certain name, I believe you could say like find name and then type in like the name here. We'll have to go with the docs. I don't know 100% off the top of my head, but it should be fairly easy to get set up. All right, so now that we have that set up, let's go to the UI and start implementing a page which can show all those products. So I'm gonna go ahead and close out of all the backend code since we verified that that actually works. And in the front end, let's go to a pages and create a new page called like, I guess we could do like a home page here. I'll just call it products actually. So we'll make a page called products. This will technically be like the home landing page, but we're going to call it products. And I think what I can do, let me keep this consistent. I never know if you should do export default down with React components or do like what I'm doing here, but I'll just keep it consistent with how we have been doing it. Like this, make a function and then export the default from it. And what we could do is basically make sure this works. So I'm going to go ahead and print out products inside this div and go back to our router, and I'm going to change this component to products. And I think both of these could just be like self-closing tags. We don't need to like nest anything, but make sure we also import that component. And one thing again, what I like to do is I like to name my files to match like the context of what they are. So create product could probably be renamed to create product page. And then products, I could probably rename this to product page or products page. That's just the way I like naming stuff, but you can do whatever you want. Let's see. Let me do this, products page, create products page. Again, I like doing that because when I do fuzzy searching, I could say like page.jsx, and that'll give me all the pages. And there's often times where you have components called like create product form or create product. And then like you have the two names that are very similar, so it's hard to do fuzzy searching on them. So I like being very specific with what the file is actually doing. Let me also rename these real quick. To be honest, I don't like using default exports, but we'll just keep it consistent. So I did some refactoring, make sure the UI still works. And it does. So let's go back to the main page, and product shows up here. So our new page is working just fine, and we can see it. And what we could do now is we need to basically do a GET request on the endpoint that we talked about or that we created, and then show all the products. So let's just go ahead and try to do that. So if you know in React, when the component mounts, you can use a hook called use_effect. So I'm going to say use_effect, and that is going to basically invoke our endpoint using Axios to get some data back. So I'm going to say const products is equal to await axios.get. And we're going to refactor all this code in a little bit. But again, like I said, I like to keep this really simple, and then I like to refactor later on. So that should hopefully give us all the products. Do a GET request on that endpoint. We get all the products. But now we don't have a way to display those products because we don't have a state variable set up. So I'm going to go up here and say like const products set products. I put an S there, is going to be equal to a useState function call. Now this should probably default to an empty array, and I need to make sure I auto import that. And also I need to make sure I auto import the use_effect. All right, so a little recap in case you were kind of new with all this stuff. So we're using a hook called useState, which you need to use in React to basically set up component state. I'm setting the state equal to an empty array so that, you know, when the page first mounts, you have no products. And then it's going to basically run this code. This is how you basically do an on-mount function call. And it's going to call this function, and it's going to get all the products from Axios or using Axios on this endpoint. And then it's going to basically set those. Let me just rename this so we don't have like a name overwrites going on. And then also in use_effect, you can pass it empty brackets to like specify when it should actually run. If you don't pass anything, it's only going to run once when the component mounts, but you can kind of specify whatever you want in here. And if you're using ESLint, it's probably going to complain and say like, you need to make sure that like Axios or whatever, that this dependency is not like changing. I don't know. I don't like following that rule. It's kind of annoying. But maybe you'll see what I'm talking about in a little bit. We are getting the issue. It's saying you can't use await inside of here. So that's the one thing that personally I think is completely stupid with React, is you'll notice that you can't actually use like asynchronous calls here for some reason. I mean, maybe, I don't think it'll work. Let's see. Is it use_effects? It seems like that works. I think there's some issue with like, you're not supposed to be using like async await inside of the use_effect, or maybe I'm thinking about something else. So it's complaining here, effect callbacks are synchronous to prevent race conditions, put an async function inside. Like, they recommend that you do this. Honestly, I think it's a hack. This thing is stupid. my own opinion, I'm saying that this is just something dumb that you have to do. So I'm just going to do const fetch products just to make the ESLinter happy. And I'm basically going to invoke that. This is like a workaround you can do to get rid of that little error that's showing up in the console. So basically take all that code, you put it in a function here that's async, and then you call it. Why do you have to do this? It kind of told you, it said that use_effect is synchronous and it doesn't like asynchronous code. But I personally think it's just dumb. So let's just move on. I'm just complaining right now. So yeah, what we want to do is we want to loop through all the products, and we need to show them. So I'm going to go ahead and just in this div, first of all, I'm going to say products.map. This is how you loop over things in React typically. And then when I loop over these products, I'm going to create some more divs for right now, but we can kind of refactor this later on. And I just want to print out the product name. Okay, so this should hopefully get all the data from the backend, and it's crashing. Products.map is not a function. It doesn't think that this is an array, right? So I'm going to say that this is a fluke and refresh the page. Why is this complaining? Okay, there's also a warning here. I'm going to go ahead and just delete that link import so that we can have like a fresh looking build. So yeah, let's figure out why products is failing. It's here. Products is here. It's inside the function. It's calling use state of an empty array. There should be no issue unless our backend is returning something bad. So let's go and look at the request actually. And let us look at the products endpoint. If you look at this, we get back a ton of products. So the endpoint's working just fine. But it's still saying products.map is not a function. Or it's not a yeah, products.map is not a function. So the only what typically that means is that this is like null. Oh, okay, yeah. So using Axios, this is another thing I don't like about Axios is that you don't actually get back the products. You have to like get the data and then like do something like that so that you can actually use the data that came back. Just another nuance with Axios. Keep that in mind. I always forget about this. So what I like to do is I like to actually wrap all this stuff in a separate file, which we'll probably do in a second when we refactor all this. But yeah, now we have all the products displayed. So what I would like to do now is we should probably display these in like a React Bootstrap card or something just to make it look nicer. And then also, we don't have any container on this page. So I'm going to go ahead and refactor some of this stuff. So this will be a container. This could be a row. Let's do this row. And then this could be a column. Inside the column, that's when we're going to do all the product map stuff. And then make sure you just auto import all this, which again, auto importing is not working for some reason. So let's just do it manually. So we're importing container, we need row, and we need column. Save that. Everything looks good in our build. Go back to the page. Everything's fine. We do get an error here. Yeah, make sure that we have key on this. So anytime that you do a loop or a map in React, you need to make sure that you attach keys to your elements so that React knows like how to uniquely identify one from another. I'm just going to put the underscore ID on this because I know that's going to be unique, and that should hopefully resolve that issue. All right, so let's go back to React Bootstrap here and find a card component. And we're going to use that card to basically generate all of our products. So I'm just going to take this example and I'm going to basically put that here inside the div. All right. So again, it's failing because we haven't auto imported a lot of this stuff. We need to import card and button. But what we could put here is instead of the title here, I could say product.name. Remember, we have access to this product variable, and then we have like name, we have description. So instead of all this, I could say like product.description. And this could be, I guess, view. And maybe like an add to cart button. Oops, let's just say add to cart. You know, let's just keep it simple. We'll do add to cart, one thing at a time. And then for the image here, let's see what happens. Auto imported the wrong thing. I don't know why I imported that. Make sure I import button from the correct React Bootstrap, and then it'll look nice. And then for the image, let's just find like a random image online. I'll say the eggs image. And yeah, I'll copy that image location, copy link address. We're just going to hard code that for right now, just so that we have something nicer to look at in the UI. Okay, I'm getting CORS issues on that. Okay, let's just go to, let's just copy this one. think this will be accessible. This React image should be accessible here, maybe. There we go. All right, so this image is huge. Maybe there's a way in React Bootstrap to like change the size of that. Might have to give it like an actual like style. Hack this on real quick. The card image, I'm gonna say like 4 rim, see if that changes anything. Guess it looks a little bit better, but actually, is this an image? Let me just save this image so we can actually like make this look nicer. I'm gonna put this image directly in our workspace inside of our, oh, what is this project called? MERN e-commerce or something. So I have a YouTube, no, it's probably, let me search for MERN e-commerce, client, public, placeholder. The SVG. Okay, so instead of making that, I'm just gonna say placeholder.svg and see if that works. Here we go. So that looks a little bit better. We're just gonna use the actual placeholder that was on the React Bootstrap site. Now you'll notice that all these cards are like in the same row. And it's, I mean, the same column. And we kind of want like maybe 3 columns. So 1 card per column. There may be an easy way to do that. I think I could probably add like display block here. Display is our inline block. If that doesn't fix it, which it didn't, then I would recommend that we go back and we do like 3 different columns here or something. But let's see if there's actually a way to like, oh, I guess I do need to keep the width on that. Make this a little bit smaller. All right, so let's see if there's a way to like just make 3 columns without like having to specify 3 columns. I know how to do it with code. I was just hoping that there's like an easier way to use like, you know, let's just do it the way I know how to do it. So I'm gonna make 3 columns. And we are going to have to do some extra coding to get this to show up. So the issue with all this is it's kind of dirty. So I'm going to go ahead and just abstract all this away to a card. So up here, I'm going to say const card is equal to return all this. Let me rename this a product card. All right, so what this is going to allow us to do is we can have a function now that takes in a product, and that is going to be invoked here instead. So I'll just say, I think I can just do this. Let me make sure that that looks, got the right amount of parentheses. And if I go back to my UI, does this work? It does. All right, so what we can do is we can actually map over this in every single column here. And you'll see, am I missing something? Let's see what's going on here. I think what we need to do is pass in product here. So I'll say pass in product and make sure that these are all good. And then we also need to go to the actual component that we created. And we need to make sure that those are passed in as like properties here. So I'm going to do the curly braces here to get the product. And then also I'm going to get rid of this width. I think the width is messing up the page. It should be 3 columns. There we go. And it looks a little bit better. So one thing you'll notice about this, like why this is an issue, is that we're displaying the same product in 3 different columns, but really we just want to show like 1, 2, or 3. Like we don't want to do all this. So in code, if you know a better way to do this, let me know. I'll probably figure it out at some point. But really what you can do is instead of having the same products array mapped over 3 times, you could basically make a function here called like get products by modulo. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. It takes in a products, and then it's going to take in a a number, a column. Okay, I'll rename this get products and column. And this is going to take in a column. Okay, so bear with me. We're just trying to like refactor some code here. And what we want to do is we want to return all those products like this. But instead of doing a map here, we're going to do a filter. And we are going to say column and then index. And then we only want the columns where the index mod column is equal to 0. Okay, so this is like a little, hopefully you understand what modulo does in JavaScript. Basically, if index is 0 and you mod it by column 0 and it happens to be 0, you know, I have this logic all messed up. This is like max columns. So max columns needs to be this. I'm going to set it equal to 3 to begin with. And this needs to be if index mod max columns is equal to 0. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm kind of like jumping all over the place, but again, this is like live coding. So what I'm thinking is kind of jumping around because there's a lot of ways you can do the same thing. So I'm trying to find like the best way, but I'm not really explaining it. So we have a function here that we can call now. We pass it products and we pass it how many columns we want. So I'll say number of columns. Let me rename this to make it more explicit. And that is just doing some JavaScript like mod to figure out which products are in which column. And instead of doing all this, we could say products or get products in column 0. And we are going to do the same thing, column 1 and column 2. Now I think this should hopefully work. Products.filter is not a function. Oops, I need to pass this products, not products in column. It's definitely crashing hard. Let's see why it's crashing. Get products in column. We are passing in products. So we're passing in number of columns. Okay, I'm just messing everything up. This needs to be 3. Make sure that you stick with 3 here. And then we need to make sure that mod by number of columns, and if it's equal to 0, if it's equal to column here. Okay, this is so hacky. There's got to be a better way to do this. And the crazy thing is you can use like an actual CSS grid system instead of Bootstrap's grid to achieve this. Yikes. I'm sorry, y'all. This tutorial's going like everywhere. Yeah, I don't know. This works. So basically, if you know a better way to do this, like this is how I've done it before, but the issue with this, if you start scaling down the page, you're going to have to change like the number of columns. So it's going to get really complex real quick because this needs to change from 3 to like something else. But we could try to refactor this a little bit more. And like, I'll just put a constant up here and say like number of columns is equal to 3 so that we're not like hard coding this everywhere. And then also we could dry this up a little bit more. You'll notice that we're basically doing the exact same thing 3 times. So we could instead dynamically generate 3 columns by saying number of columns. I'm going to say new array, pass it number of columns, and I'm going to say fill with empty strings. I don't even know if you need fill, but then I can say map, and then I can say value, and then index. And really what we want to do is just display the same thing. Let me just do this. If you're watching this and you're completely lost, don't worry, because I'm lost myself. I don't even know what I'm trying to do here, but make sure that these parentheses match up. And what we need to do is pass index here. All right. Let's see if this actually works without using fill. Let me try this. All right, yeah, you definitely need fill. All right, so this does the exact same thing, and let me kind of explain to you what's going on here. So we're making a new array with 3 elements, right? So If there's 3 columns, we're just saying make a new array with 3 elements, and then fill that array with empty strings so that we actually have some content that we can loop over or map over. And then for every element, what we really care about is the index. We don't care about the value here. So I would, if we could leave this blank, I would, but we can't. We care about the index, and the index is what we're basically telling this function, like which column it needs to be. So I'm going to say, actually, I'm going to rename this as a column, and that'll make a bit more sense. And then we are rendering this out. So what this allows us to do is now we have like a dynamic function where we can change the number of columns like this, one line, and then we get 5 columns. Or we can change it to 2, and then we'll get 2 columns. And what you can do is you can kind of like add an event listener. When someone scales down the page, you could dynamically change this if you want to. But again, I think there's a better way to do this, and I would really appreciate someone to let me know if there is, because I'm not super confident that this is the best way. But let's just move on. So we have these products now, and we want to be able to click on them and like add them to our cart, which we don't really even have a cart set up. All right, so we're gonna probably need to start using some context here. So when you start clicking on buttons, we need to keep track of what products you've added to your cart. So let's go back to our main app.js, and we're going to try to use a context and some providers so that we can keep track of state. Now let me try to remember how to do this. I think it's just like const, I'm going to say export const shopping cart context is equal to react.create context. And what you can do with this context is I can actually say inside of this whole app, I could just say context.provider, and then value is going to be equal to something that we want to define. So what I could do is, let me do this. And for value here, whatever you pass in the value, it's going to be accessible to your inner pages or components that you want them to be accessible for. So what we typically do here is we'll just make a state variable called like cart and set cart. And that could be a state variable here that's just equal to an empty array. And then we could basically just say, let me just say cart state instead. We're going to pass cart state here. And what's it complaining about? Use state is not defined. I got to auto import this. React is not defined. Let me auto import that. All right, so we're doing context. We're basically passing the state setter and getter array, and we can access that in other files. So let's go back to the product page, and we're going to import that context here. So near the top, I'm going to say like import the context, whatever I named it, shopping cart context from /app. Now inside of this, like now that we've imported this context, what we can do is we can actually grab the setter. So I'm going to say const cart and set cart is equal to use context, and then pass it that context thing that we constructed in the app file. And that gives us access to cart and set cart. So why are we doing all this? Well, basically I want to make it so when you click on that button, make sure you auto import. When you click on, why is it complaining? Oh, I didn't save my file. When you click on add to cart, you want to add this ID or this array to your shopping cart, right? So that you can display it or that you can navigate to it. So let's add a click listener to add cart, and this will all make sense in just a second. So let's find add cart. Let's rename it to add to cart. And I'm going to say on click. Basically what we want to say is add product to cart. All right, my kids just woke up, so I'm going to try to wrap up this part of the video. Yeah, so when you click on the button, we want to call a function called like add product to cart, which is going to take in the product that we're currently looping over. So let's just create a function here. Now, unfortunately, this needs to be here. So I'm going to say, let's make a function called add product to cart that takes in a product. And we could just say set cart is equal to ... cart and product. And that should push the product into the carts array. But now this product card doesn't have access to that function. So let's just go ahead and pass it in. So I made the function here. It's doing some logic. And we want to make sure we pass that in here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this. So hopefully when you click on the actual button now, we should see on the app, there should be some state that gets added to the context. All right, you see every time I click on one of these buttons, the state kind of gets appended here. So we're actually adding objects to the cart array, but really that's not displayed anywhere in the UI. So maybe we can just display that real quick and then I can wrap up this video. So let's go back to the main app file here. And we want to add like a header. So in React Bootstrap, there is a way to display a header. Let's just go to like main headers. It might be called something else. It might be called like navigation, nav bar. Yeah. Let's just grab this one. So I'm going to make a new folder here called components. And inside components, I'm going to say like header.js x. Let's just go ahead and paste that all in. And do this. Go ahead and paste that here. And make sure you auto import some of your stuff. A container, link, nav drop down. We can come back and like refactor this how we need it. But now what we can do is import this in our main app here. Like I say, just use header. We could do that. Now this is another component which I think we could kind of, oh, nav is not defined. Let's come back to header and let's auto import that. Let's see. All right, we have a header. It's really hard to see. It's probably because I'm like zoomed in 200%, but it actually works. You can see the header here. But what we want to probably do is show like how many items we have in our shopping cart somewhere up to the right here. And to do that, we need to again use the context. So if I go back and import this context like we did in the other page, and then if I kind of say use context here, which we did on line 28 here, I can just go ahead and inside the component say use context. We don't need set cart, we just need to actually get the cart variable. That'll give us access to all the shopping cart items. And inside of this, let's see, which one do we want? I don't think I need any of this clap stuff right now. Let me just get rid of that and see what happens. All right, use context is not defined. I really wish my ESLint was set up, but not. Object is not iterable. Cannot read property symbol iterator. Why is this? Oh, okay. Yeah, I need to put this in the actual context. Okay, so make sure whenever you're trying to access context, make sure you put it in the wrapped context provider here. So I think I should have access to it now. And there's a button here. And what we want to do is to the right of that button or to the left of it, let's just display like how many items are in the cart. And then I'm going to wrap up this video. So I'm going to say cart length. And as we click on these buttons, you'll see that we're adding stuff to our cart, which is pretty cool. And then later we can refactor this to actually be like a cart icon with like a number next to it. And when you click it, it goes to your shopping cart. But I'm going to wrap up this part of the tutorial because I need to go help out with the kids. If you enjoyed watching this and I helped you out, be sure to give me a like or a thumbs up. Leave me a comment below if you have any suggestions of things I can do better. And like always, if you haven't subscribed yet, please click that subscribe button because it's going to help you hopefully learn more about React and become a slightly better web developer. All right, stay tuned for part 4.